friends, my name is Katie. Welcome to my channel, Life Between Words. Today I am continuing my Advent series in which I recommend books based on the themes leading up to Christmas. This week the theme I'm focusing on is peace, which has been by far the hardest theme for me to come up with books for. When I was thinking about peace, it was hard for me to get outside of the idea of physical peace and books that deal directly with themes of peace versus war. I was having a lot of trouble coming up with books that deal with peace in that way. So I decided to talk to my friend Becca, who is a librarian and also just very wise and thoughtful. And she writes an Advent blog, so I know that she has thought a lot about these sorts of things, and I thought that she would be a great resource, and she was, and she really got me thinking outside of the box a little bit in terms of what peace encompasses. Peace encompasses reconciliation, it encompasses justice, it encompasses internal rest, or internal quietude. So with that in mind, here are some books that deal with the theme of peace in different ways. Let me just take a drink of my cup of holiday cheer. I wish I could say this was tea, but alas, it's ginger ale. I'm going to start out talking about a nonfiction book called Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. This is a nonfiction book that came out in 2014. Bryan Stevenson is a lawyer who started the Equal Justice Initiative, which seeks to offer legal support for people who are either too poor or who have found themselves wrongly convicted. This is the nonfiction telling of that fight that Bryan Stevenson has taken on in his life. He fights for the poor, the oppressed, the voiceless, the vulnerable in our communities. Specifically in the South is where he is located. In this book, he highlights several prominent cases that his firm has taken on. It's incredibly inspiring. There are parts that are definitely heart-wrenching, and it really gets you thinking about reconciliation in this country and the work that still needs to be done. On the back of the book, one of the things it says to describe the book is that it tells the story of the redeeming potential of mercy. And mercy and peace go hand in hand, because when we are seeking true justice and mercy and reconciliation, what we're really seeking is peace. And for that reason, I think this is a great representation of a book about peace. I also want to say that not only is this a really important nonfiction book, but it's also an extremely readable nonfiction book. So don't be intimidated if you're not a nonfiction reader generally. This is a book that I feel like goes hand in hand with Just Mercy, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is an American classic, and Bryan Stevenson, who I just talked about, who wrote Just Mercy, is sort of the real-life Atticus Finch. Like, he is a lawyer in the South working for justice, and Atticus Finch is, of course, the father of Scout and Jem, who are sort of the main characters in this book. Atticus Finch, who is a lawyer, spends this whole book defending a black man who is on trial in his town. And he also spends the book imparting wisdom to his kids about what seeking reconciliation, what seeking justice really looks like. And so I'm going to leave you with a few quotes from the book that I think are really powerful. I'm just reading them off my phone. One of the things that Atticus says to his kids is, "I wanted you to see what real courage is, instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through no matter what." And this too. "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside his skin and walk around in it. They're certainly entitled to think that, and they're entitled to full respect for their opinions, but before I can live with other folks, I've got to live with myself. The one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience." So this book, and Atticus Finch in particular, are a great example of a man living with full integrity and also seeking peace in his own community, standing up for what is right, which is a form of seeking peace. Next, going in a little bit different direction, I want to mention Marilynne Robinson and her book Gilead. Gilead is about an old man who had a child late in life, and in this book he's dying and writing a letter to his young son because he knows he's not going to be around for his son's growing up and adolescence and young adulthood. Not only is this book, as you read it, just a really, really peaceful read, a really peaceful, quiet read, you feel calm as you're reading it, but there's so much wisdom in it about what life, what love, what hope, and what peace looks like. You have to go into Gilead with the right expectations because it's not an easy read. There is absolutely no plot to this book. I've heard it described as a wisdom telling, and that is really how it reads to me. It's not for people seeking a narrative, but it is so filled with truth and beauty, and it really, really is a beautiful, beautiful book to read. Marilynne Robinson, in my opinion, will likely go down as a great American author and one of the best in our, current history. She is that good at writing. She also wrote Lila and I believe Home, sort of a trilogy or companion novels. Lila, the main character in this book, is the wife of John Ames, who is the main character, the one writing this letter to his son in Gilead. John Ames himself is a peaceful person, and that comes across so clearly in his telling, in the telling of his life, and in the wisdom that he gives to his young son. Finally, and probably the most directly related to peace in terms of how I was thinking about it traditionally, peace versus war, I want to recommend the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm just holding up the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring. This story being told is not a very peaceful story, but the characters in the book are definitely seeking peace for their world. One of the only reasons that Frodo and the other hobbits decide to join into this fight, into this battle, and to seek to destroy the ring is because they don't want to see the Shire destroyed. They want their Shire to continue in peace. The Shire in particular, in my mind, embodies a peaceful life. The elves as well, but the elves are sort of ethereal and it's hard to relate, whereas the qualities of the Shire are comfort and coziness and joyfulness and even a quality of being carefree. The hobbits themselves are sort of without guile, and that is why the hobbits that are part of the story join in the fight, because they don't want the Shire to lose those things. So while there are lots of battles and this isn't necessarily a peaceful story, the characters are seeking peace. And in that respect, I think that this is a book that deals with the theme of peace quite heavily. I'm really sorry if the explanations for those books didn't do the theme of peace justice, but I do think that all of them deal with this idea of what peace encompasses. It encompasses justice and mercy and reconciliation and bringing those things into the world, bringing those things into our communities, bringing those things into our own lives. And I think that these books really do deal with that topic well. And as always, I would love to hear your recommendations about books that deal with the theme of peace. And tell me why you think they do as well, because I'm not sure that I was great at articulating that, but I tried, and I would really love to hear your thoughts. So let me know, let's talk about it, let's talk about what peace means, and let's talk about where we find peace in literature. I'll see you all later. Bye!